Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the costumeco channel. And today I'm back with another costume designer interview. Today, my guest is Marion Boyce. She is the costume designer of the Artful Dodger Season 2, which is on Disney Plus. And I'm so delighted that she's joining me. I believe, Marion, are you in Australia right now?
Oh, I am. I'm in Victoria in Australia. Yeah.
Wonderful. So you're on the other side of the continent from me because I'm in Canada. So, but Canada, we're very friendly with Australia. So I'm delighted to have you today.
Well, thank you. Thank you. And very different temperature because we're in summertime, the heat of
Oh,
summer.
yes. Yes.
And
We're like
you're
minus,
snowed under.
we have lots of snow right now. And like minus, I think it was like minus 17 with the wind chill today. So it's
Oh, wow.
chilly. But I have my fireplace on, so I'm nice and cozy. But anyway, I want to talk to you about this wonderful show. I was just saying to you before we started how much I love the show. It's got everything. It's got historical, sort of storyline. It has humor, so funny. It's touching. It's romantic. It's sciencey. It's thrilling. There's so many elements that I just love about it, and there's so many twists and turns as well. So now, before we get started, I was hoping maybe everyone could learn a bit about you. Would you mind sharing a bit about yourself and how you got into costume design?
Absolutely. I have a few passions in life. One is costumes, textiles, things I call treasures, which is probably encompasses a whole lot of really beautiful things. I'm a bit of a self-professed bowerbird and a collector. I have a very large collection of treasures. Um, I I cook a lot. I feed a lot of people, and I garden is my passions in life, and read. Uh,
So
I'm
you're a very
surrounded
well
by
balanced person.
oh, well, I'm not sure if you could say that, but I try. Look, it's yeah. Let's say yes.
So, how did you turn some of your passions into a passion for costume design?
Well, I from a very young age was playing around with fabrics and textiles and making stuff, going to opportunity shops, finding really beautiful sort of old blouses and changing the colors of them, changing the style of them. Used to get my father to help me dye stuff in my mother's pasta pots, which was totally sacrilegious. My mother was an Italian and loved cooking, so I'm not sure she ever knew I used to dye my blouses in her pasta pot, but it was probably good. And so from my first memory of being involved in sort of history is I had a neighbour called Miss Fisk when I was a young child, from the age of 4 and 5. And in the afternoon at 4 o'clock, she used to allow me to come over the fence. She had this beautiful big glass conservatory in the back that was full of her treasures, and she used to show me her treasures. We used to go through her treasures, and from that time, I really had a passion for lots of stuff. I used to, as a young child, love walking around antique stores, and um, I suppose I was quite a curious child. But I started fashion design after school, and never wanted to be a fashion designer. It was too rigid, and I didn't want to. I've never, sort of followed slavishly fashion, but I had no idea what I wanted to do. I started doing, in conjunction with a friend, I started doing fashion parades at nightclubs and with bands backing us. And a producer or a director saw one of my shows when I was 21 and asked me if I'd do their film, which was a futuristic film. And the arrogance of youth said, yes, that sounds fantastic, thank you. And so I designed with Karen Merkel this film, and I thought I found my tribe. I found where I needed to be, and so I sort of created my own apprenticeship and joined the film industry.
That's amazing. Thanks so much for sharing.
Totally.
Now, and by the way, I didn't ask you. I'm assuming most of your work is done in Australia. Is that correct, or have you done some in America?
No, I have. I've done it in America, in Asia, in New Zealand, all over the place.
So now, what about this project? So you came in season 2. Can you tell me how that came about?
Uh, I got a phone call from one of the producers asking me to come and join the show. They were looking for a designer. I'd worked for this producer on Nautilus, which was another Disney project a few years before. And so he reached out and said, would you entertain the idea of coming? And I started watching because I hadn't seen it before. I started watching it, and they sent me some scripts, and I was really hooked. The playfulness, the pace, the wit. It was just cheeky.
Absolutely.
And there was a lot of I thought there was a lot of places that I could a lot of things that I could do.
Lots of opportunities, because also this season there's a lot of new characters and there's a lot of, character development. So that's something I want to dig in with you a bit more. So when you first, what was your first impression of this particular world, like this setting, like, of Dodger and Fagin, sort of fish out of water in Australia? What was your sort of impression of the whole world?
Well, it's quite sort of true to life. Everybody came to the colony, and Australia is such a vastly different place than where they'd come from. And so it had there was a lot of opportunities, but at the same time, they just really gone back into what they escaped from, because the UK, to a very large degree, with Australia, had just transported everything, their rules, their regulations, their way of life, their class system, and they just dumped it into Australia, which is a very different landscape. So they'd left something behind, but they'd actually come back to the same thing. So probably more opportunity, but to a very large degree, they'd landed back in the same world with the same rules.
Oh, that's absolutely. Yeah, that totally makes sense. So what felt the most important to establish right away with the costumes in season 2? Like, there's a bit of a time jump, right? I think it's 6 months. So, and did that make it a bit easier having that little bit of space between season 1 and season 2?
A lot, because the characters had, Belle had grown up a bit. All sorts of, Fanny starts finding her way. There's a whole lot. The characters fly a little further in a whole lot of ways. I mean, Darius changes. Everybody changes to a small degree. I really felt that it was really important to hone down the colour palette and to work out a colour palette for the show. And there was also the introduction of Devil's Elbow, which wasn't in season 1. So you got from very high end to the lower parts of town. So you really had to make a way to work out a way how that played into the piece. So I started out with the colour palette, and then really drenched. The colours shone for the governor's family and that high-end part of town. And then as you went through levels of society, the colours sort of leached out until you got to Devil's Elbow, where it was the same colour palette, but it was leached of all the brightness and the shininess.
Yeah, because I guess they would use sort of like more organic compounds, like color dyes. They wouldn't be using like the aniline dyes, like say the upper classes would be using, I suppose. But since you're speaking of color palette, why don't I skip to that question? So the color palette for the main cast, it appears to me at least to reflect each character where they are, throughout the season. So did you approach building the palette, how did you approach building that palette? And did you assign a color to each of the characters, at least with the main characters?
In a way, yes.
Mm-hmm.
There was a color palette, and it was quite limited, but you had to find a place, and it was a very emotional choice in a whole lot of ways. The Belle's palette was very strong. She's really independent. Unlike her sister, she was free of frippery and free of sort of accoutrements. And she had a much more serious nature to her, and it was a colour of power as well, which was sort of subliminal. Her father's army was that colour, so it was a bit of a power play in a whole lot of ways. It just showed her strength and her strength of character. Fanny's was a very different journey. She's this flirty sort of frivolous creature who's full of sort of charm, not much social conscience, and quite delightful. But she has a very, very different way about her. So she was in a much more sort of colourful part of that palette. And then her mother was really regal. So Lady Jane needed to look like a woman of authority, wealth and authority and position. So the triangle of those three women, it was really important, the colours, for how that worked.
Now, and I know I noticed, at least with Fagin, that you repurposed, I believe you repurposed his costume from season 1. And so were you able to repurpose, I know with some of the females, such as Lady Jane, Fanny, and Belle, that it appears to me at least that you recreated all of their costumes or created all of their costumes. But were you able to repurpose a bunch of the costumes from season 1 so that you didn't have to like start completely from scratch?
Well, some of the characters, things were repurposed. Some of Dodger's, we sort of retailored some of them, changed, played around the edges with them. But everyone sort of like quite a bit of. The professor's was the same, but then we made new vests because his journey was different. Darius's character, he'd become a curate by that stage, so he joined the church. So he was completely different. There were some characters that we were able to repurpose, but for a whole lot, all of the main cast, especially the governor's family, was all remade, and the brother was a new character.
Yes, absolutely. So, according to the notes I read, you had 8 weeks of prep and you had to, every garment was custom designed and made. So how did you balance the pressure to shape your how did that time pressure shape your creative decision-making process?
I'm not very good at compromise. So you've just got to find a way, and you've got to
I
find
love
a way
that.
forward.
Yeah.
So I realised Sydney was really busy at the time. So I had a lot of workrooms in different parts of the country. So Fanny and Lady Jane's costumes was made by Vanita, who's an amazing cutter, sewer, herself in Queensland. So that was made out of Brisbane. I had a tailor who's really brilliant, who I'd used before, Gloria, who did the governor and Dickie's clothes. Belle's clothes were made by a different workroom in Sydney. So our main workroom in Sydney mostly did the secondary cast and the guest roles, and then everything else was made out of different workrooms. So there was 4 or 5, often 5 different workrooms running at the same time, which is a little full on, but you just, I'm very organised and very able to cut through the noise in a way, and I'm very single-minded. I'm really, it's quite tricky in some ways because I'm not good at compromise, and I need to just keep moving forward. But it takes over my whole life. I go down a rabbit hole and I don't really come out of it. I'm just from dawn to dusk. I work very long hours, but you just have a sense of clarity and a direction, and you've got no room for errors, which makes it puts a lot of pressure on you, really. But at the same time, that clears out a whole lot of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it sounds like you're very focused on what you want, and you're able to carve that path, and also do some divide and conquering, which is always helpful.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and
Totally.
calling on people that you know and respect and know their work
yeah.
is good as creators, right?
Their work is good, and that they're able to deliver, and are also really good at bringing to life what your design is. So I work quite closely with the workroom. That's the place I really love being. That's the place that I suppose is my happiest place to be. Just I feel really weird when I don't have a workroom around me.
Absolutely.
But I have people like Gareth Blaha, who's been design assistant on and off for years, who's one of the most talented individuals I know. He was working on another show, but he did all of the Venetian headpieces. There's a lot of people who I have a really good relationship with, and they come to the party, which is quite amazing, and we go on this extraordinary journey. and often it is a journey. We had a phrase on this show, and it was, "It's a lot," and that was said a lot. Oh, it's a lot.
Yeah, because there's so many elements, especially with a historical piece. And that actually brings me to my next question. So I believe the setting is about 1850, 1860?
1850s to 60s,
Yeah.
in that.
So, so now you're dealing with, not only are you dealing with like a colossal amount of costumes for, all of your main players and your background players, but you're also having to deal with the historical elements of it. So how did you balance the historical accuracy and against the telling of the story?
Well, I was lucky that I've done that period twice before.
Oh,
Never
okay.
set in Australia, set in sort of, I did Moby Dick with Patrick Stewart and Gregory Peck. So that was set in that period, but that was America. And then I did Nautilus, and that was, English based. So I had done that period before, but I'd never done an Australian version of that. So really, for me, the research was actually who was in the colonies and how that shaped the world. And being able to play with that sort of absolute insanity that the English just transported everything from the UK, dumped it in Australia, including the level of dress. Our temperature in Australia and our conditions in Australia were vastly different. And it was sort of, to me, a bit of a comedy. And the first Australians, they were just, I think, laughing a whole lot at how absurd this was, that they used to get off the boats, and even after, way after, they never adapted their clothing to our way of life in Australia. Well, not our way of life, but our temperature. And they had, the women had these beautiful confectionaries on their heads, but no brims for the heat and the sunshine. They were still wearing incredibly beautiful wools, and the layers of clothing was just extraordinary. And it would have been incredibly tough. So that's always really interesting. And I was surprised and I shouldn't have been surprised, but I was surprised at the amount of traders that were in Australia at the time. So there was a lot of people. There were, Canadians, there was Americans, there was, people from Switzerland, everywhere part of the world, because it was a port. So there was a lot of trade, international.
Yes, very
trade.
International.
Yeah. And so that was.
You sort of mentioned a few things, but was there anything, any detail that you uncovered historically that you were surprised at?
Probably not.
You mentioned the hats, that the women didn't wear brims despite the heat.
Oh, well, I was surprised for how long, like how rigidly in Australia they clung to the past.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like a lot of people when they transport themselves from a different land, they cling to the past in a way that their home country doesn't, in a lot of ways. We have a saying in Australia, we have a very large Greek population in Australia, and we have a saying that the Greeks in Australia are more Greeks than the Greeks, because they hang on to their Greekness in a very different way.
Yes. Yeah. Canada's like that too. We have a lot of people, who come from other cultures, and then they hold on to the culture here, which we kind of celebrate, to be honest with you, in Canada. But I think regarding immigrants coming from England, like my family were immigrants from England. And so I think for sure, like, they would keep that silhouette. Absolutely. But we had an opposite problem. We were very cold. So they probably just weren't dressed warm enough.
Right.
In that particular case. Now, were you looking at any, I'm assuming that you would have looked at some historical examples. Were there any real life examples that you used, for instance, maybe based something from Belle or some of the other characters on when you were doing your research?
I have a lot of books. I'm forever delving into books and history. Paintings, galleries. You collect your information from all sorts of places, and I don't know. I just feel well. I suppose I look at cutting books more and technical books more than I do picture books.
Mm-hmm. Like a Janet Arnold book of some kind, or
Nancy Bradford, and there's a whole host of really great pattern books. And so the silhouette, if you understand the silhouette and you get to the core of the silhouette, there's a whole lot of different places you can fly, as long as that rings true. So if you get the undergarments and the silhouette right, there's a whole lot of places you can go. And there's, we don't have the same textiles. We don't have a lot of the same materials that they had in those days. So you've got to work out a way of what you can use, how it's, you need the weight in the fabric, but also you don't want the heaviness, because we were doing it mostly in an Australian summer. So it's got to actually look real, and move the same way, have the weight to be able to move in the same way, but not of the same materials. Does that make sense?
Yeah, actually, I think I had I have a question about that. So while everything must be custom made, what fabrics and construction techniques were most important for surviving the Australian heat while still reading as period accurate? It's a real challenge, isn't it? So did you lighten the weight of the fabrics compared to what it maybe would have been, or the undergarments?
Sometimes, but there was combination. You've got to know quite a bit about textiles, and you've got to understand how they move and how they're going to react. That's one of the big challenges of any piece, is actually the understanding of textiles and knowledge. Sometimes something surprises you, but if you can find fabrics that aren't as heavy and as warm and as prohibitive in a whole lot of ways, that have a little bit more mobility to them, because we move in quite different ways than we used to. The real life people from the 1860s, they didn't stride through streets like Belle did. They had a much more measured way of life, and a much more, in a way of her class, much more languid way of life. So we're playing characters from that time, but in a modern way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a challenge, because the clothing has to do stunts. It has to do a whole lot of things that never would have happened in real life. So there's a lot of challenges for the fabric to work for the actors in many different ways, not just the heat, but for safety, for visual grandness, also a host of different things one has to think about when designing a costume. It's often, there's many different elements you have to think about in that process.
One thing I really was happy to see is that Belle wore a chemise under her corset. I don't know. There's so many shows you don't see that. And people are always like, but what about the chafing?
But they're just beautiful.
Oh, yeah.
They're just really beautiful. I have a collection of them, and there's the level of work that goes into those is just astronomical, and they're just really, really beautiful. I can open a box and sit down on the floor and spend hours going through, lace and chemises and all of that. It's good.
Yeah, absolutely. All the beautiful underpinnings.
Mm.
Now, okay, so the Venetian ball, which is, it's a different silhouette, right? It's a 18th century, I believe. Sorry, go ahead.
Middle of 1700s.
Middle of the 1700s, exactly. So that was that was such a fun sequence, and then of course you had the masks and the headpieces and everything. So what was your starting point when designing a scene like that?
Well, Disney wanted a spectacle. They wanted a big piece. They wanted a spectacle, and they said, "So, we want a masked ball."
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah, masked ball. So my mind immediately went through to, the 1750s, 1760s, where they had those huge Venetian balls, which were Rococo-driven, which were mad and full of extraordinary frippery, and the exact opposite of the colony in so many ways. It was full of, cheekiness in a whole lot of ways. It had more skin exposure. It had more ruffles, frills, feathers. It was just delightful, and it needed to be that extravagant to be a spectacle. So
Yeah, and
that
of
was
course, and
my
then Jack has his, he's also, it's a good opportunity for him because he can be in disguise coming in as well. So there's a good plot point there
That's
as
right.
well.
So it had to be a masked ball to
Mhm.
hide him within the crowd, but also to sort of, yeah, that was always really interesting to hide someone in plain sight and what you actually do. So Belle still knows who he is, but no one else. I mean, it was such a dangerous game he was playing, going to that ball. But it was a lot of fun. I mean, to Fanny to sort of come to the fore, Belle had to sort of sink into the background a bit, because in a way she'd always found her way. She was this really strong character, and Fanny had found it a bit tougher to find her place in life. And so she let Fanny shine, and it was certainly Fanny's ball, and there was something quite delightful about it. Fanny's ensemble was very, very tricky because she had to start in the middle of the ball. She starts throwing pots. She's on a potter's wheel, and she had to look. That dress had to work with the big side panniers and all of the
Oh,
stuff.
yeah.
It actually had to work and still look good with her sitting on a potter's wheel,
Mhm.
and then unfortunately killing her fiance.
Yeah, that was great. That was crazy. I was like I was laughing at that because I think she would be doing like a trundle for the potter's wheel, right? So, I was like, that must have been some power she had doing the potter's wheel with the trundle.
Absolutely. And she
The
was
other thing was,
so
of course, the
quickly.
Romeo and Juliet sequence within, like the sequence within the ball was just a riot. It was so funny, having,
It was.
these sort of pantomime, I guess, or like cross-dressed characters, which I loved. Um, Now, I was gonna ask you a question though about the sergeant. Sorry, I've forgotten his name, but the dashing gentleman. Uh,
Oh, boxer.
yes, and how now because is I was gonna ask you a question because he is in mourning. Is that why he's not wearing partaking in the ball in that way, and he's just wearing a tail suit?
Well, he and a few other men wore tail suits, so the governor did as well.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, so a few of them did, and the governor, he sort of decided that it was, he was of a rank, being head of the colony, that it was sort of not quite the right thing to do. And Boxer did, in a way. Boxer was very black and white, and for him to even come, it was sort of a stretch. And he had a certain stillness about his character, so it felt wrong to put him in a frivolous sort of, like Uncle Dickie, who
Mhm.
embraced the whole entire thing. It felt too frivolous to put him in a costume. So he was just incredibly elegant. Um,
Oh, yes, absolutely. Well, I mean,
mm,
that's sort of what I took from it because we also have a widow who also comes to the ball, and that's considered shocking, which I didn't even think about because she was still in mourning, right? But she wanted to bring her daughter, so that was interesting. But whereas Boxer was, he had been a long time, like it had been many many years, I think, since he had
mm,
lost his wife, right? So,
yes.
um, now, one of the things, there is a lot of, blood. There a lot of blood. There is mud. There is rain. There is like sewage, all
Mm.
kinds of things. So, what was that like for your team to have? And what are the challenges? Like, I noticed that I think that last season I didn't see this as much, but this season I noticed a lot of aprons in the ward. So, what were how did you approach that for your team to
Mm.
deal with all those
Well,
challenges?
I was uh, watching the first season. I was surprised at how much, but once you get blood on you in the hospital, and then a lot of the script is within one day, you're
Mhm.
stuck with blood running through the streets, going out for dinner, doing whatever you do within the rest of your day. So I just wanted to minimize the blood that was then transferred into the rest of the day, and to actually have a device. It felt like there was a new doctor in charge of the hospital, and there was more discoveries. And one of them would have been hygiene.
Mhm.
So that was a good place to then have an apron, so one wasn't covered in blood the whole time, and cuffs and stuff, so your sleeves, so they could still get blood on them in the hospital, but they left it at the hospital. So that was a choice. I felt that there was a lot of blood for, teenagers. Um, so I wanted to minimize that. The mud was something else. There was a whole there was a decision to flood Devil's Elbow, but Sydney was going through a really rainy period at the time, so it became far more than we ever anticipated.
Oh, so you couldn't control it really. It was sort of
No, we were all walking on boards.
Oh, that's awful.
on
So
the
yeah,
ground.
so that was real. It wasn't even like done by set dressing.
No, it just became a tremendous. Well, it looked great, but
Mhm.
it was not meant to be that level. So that was something else again. So the on-set team worked really hard. It was really exhausting and really difficult because some of those costumes were created well before all of those rain events happened. So there wasn't the multiples that one needed. But we did have one outfit that was really, really problematic, which was that beautiful tangerine dress that had the laser cut elements to it. And for
Oh,
some
yes,
reason, and that was a decision to wear that in that town the first time, because it was like Belle had to shine, had to show that, she's still the governor's daughter. She doesn't quite understand the animosity of that town towards her. Her father, as governor, would have hung quite a few of their relatives. There's a whole sort of social commentary going on through all of that. And for her to stand there looking so beautiful in the middle of this really depressed place was, a big comment within itself. But that outfit was just the most unforgiving thing. And every time she wore it, it got destroyed.
Oh my
So
gosh.
we remade and remade and remade parts of that
Mhm.
costume. It was just one of those things. My heart would just go, oh my God, what now? Like,
Well, I was going to ask you, did you make her skirts just a slightly bit shorter? Because I noticed when she is walking, it looks like she's just it doesn't quite touch the ground. Like there's never a point where it's actually touching the ground. Whereas some of the background, I noticed their skirts where they're in the drier areas were maybe dragging slightly. Was that an intentional
well,
choice?
that was an intentional choice for a
Mhm.
few different reasons. One is that every crinoline, see, everything down to the crinoline and the shape and the style of the crinoline is really important, because that sort of becomes a real character thing. And her crinoline had this beautiful sort of lyricism to it. It actually had, it moved in a way with her, and it had a bounce to it, and it had quite a bit of energy. Some of them much have a lot more stillness to them, but hers had a really beautiful bounce. And it took me a while to find it, because I wanted to sort of harness that energy to feel like, she's in perpetual motion all the time. She was always on a mission. And the skirts, it just felt like that for her as a character. That was a decision. This is just not functional. She just had a pragmatism about her that just wasn't practical, and she went against the norms. So Fanny's skirts were always brushing against the ground, and then that was someone else's problem to sort it.
Oh, yes, yes.
How
She
dirty
would hand it
could
to her
that
lady
be?
maid. There you go. I never
Yeah.
saw Lady Maid, by the way. I was like, where's the Lady Maid?
Well,
She was hiding.
well,
Hiding
Lady
from the
Macbeth
mom.
was the thing. Well,
Um,
those daughters went outside convention,
oh, I
so
know,
I'm sure that
absolutely.
they
That's why that part is very contemporary, right? Um,
Yeah, so they didn't want anyone to know what they're up to.
no, it's funny. I love them sneaking. Now, I wanted to ask you about a few specific questions about some of the characters. So, if it's okay if we start with Belle. So, I noticed you said something about her footwear, showed sort of her journey to becoming a surgeon. So how did you use her costume to chart her evolution this season? I mean, obviously we have the showstopper at the end of the season, which we can get to after.
Well, Belle, in a lot of ways, just Belle. Belle was really from the first season. It was very clear who Belle was, but she grew up a little bit between the two seasons. But her journey really, the scripts were very, very clear, the direction of Belle's arc, and she had to have a strength about her all the time, which she had to show this strength about her without it being austere and without it being in any way dowdy. Um, Her footwear, within making pieces these days, a lot of people want to modernize it in some ways, want to sort of put a modern spin on it, on period things, which is can be a tricky road in some ways, because there are certain tenets, and it's what we were sort of talking about before, is the silhouette of a period needs to be right, and you have more room to fly. For Belle, there was a certain cheekiness. She had, like, I started putting her in modern Mary Janes and things, really beautiful ones that had sort of studs on them. So every so often you'd get, just peeking out the bottom of her skirt, you'd get this beautiful sort of spotted sock or a studded shoe or something that was just sort of a little bit left of centre. So that was sort of quite a lot of fun to find that balance. And it's quite weird that not a lot of people noticed it, but it certainly was a deviation.
Mm-hmm. I have a friend named Jeff Churchill. He works out of Toronto. He does a lot of shoes for film and TV. And I had him on one time because it said, it's one of those things a lot of times people don't even notice, which I don't know that that's a bad thing, because it's maybe subconscious. But sometimes it's just, I was just talking to a designer, sometimes they just are shooting above the waist, and you don't see anything, right? So you're always like, turn it.
I have a very different thing about shoes, though, and that a shoe helps an actor a lot. So, from top to bottom, one has to be right. But also a shoe, if it's flat-footed and you're playing someone who's got an arrogance or a swagger, you can't do that in a flat shoe. So it has to be, the heel has to be right. The balance of the shoe has to be right, because that helps the actor with the movement. So you can't, it's very hard in a flat shoe to dance, to do all sorts of things. So I find that the footwear and the style and shape of the footwear is really important to the actor's movement.
It's literally their foundation. It's how they're on their feet, right, all the time. So Lady Fanny, who, by the way, this season is just a riot. She had quite a costume journey compared to season 1. So do you want to talk a little bit about her shift? I sort of looked at it as she was sort of living under Belle's shadow a little bit, but then she sort of finds her calling with meeting up with Fagin and his gang, even though he's kind of manipulating her a little bit. She's found her calling and her talents. So do you want to talk a little bit about her?
Yes, that was a really great journey, because she started out and she was a lot more sort of conservative and very, pretty, full of, whimsy and delightful charm. And when she found her calling, she became a lot more brazen and took on a high-end version of what she would see in the bars, so the whalers' bars, etc., where most of the women were prostitutes. So it's sort of a nod to them in a whole lot of ways. She took on a whole her idea of it became sort of less lace-driven and became much bolder and more flounces, and that was her way of trying to fit in to the underclass. And she was delighted to join that gang. But at the same time, her father could never find out. So it was a bit of a road for her to travel, in that sort of she still needed to display outer sort of convention, but at the same time to fit into this sort of underworld of which would have been so much fun for her, coming from a very rigid sort of life that she was living. So
I think
journey had freedom.
Sorry, finish your thought there. I was just going to say something else.
Her journey was freedom in a whole lot of ways.
No, what I was going to say is that I think that the folks that, like the Fagin gang, I think they loved her too. I think that it was reciprocal, right?
Oh, totally.
They really took to her. Of course, she's buying rounds of drinks, so that doesn't hurt.
No, that's right. We're buying rounds of drinks, but also it was such a novelty for them. For
Absolutely.
The governor's daughter that becomes part of their gang, it sort of elevates their whole position in life. That they've got someone of respectability with them, who joins in the fun, and sometimes the fun's at her expense, but that it's joyful and it's playful, and she she started taking on some of the mannerisms from the bar and stuff, and it was really quite delightful. It was great fun, her journey.
Now I think this is probably my favorite character, and I don't know who your favorite character is, but Lady Jane, her like going from season 1 to the end of season 2 is just such like an arc, and I absolutely loved her. But I particularly loved her looks this season. So last season it was very, my word was austere, kind of dark, whereas this season you've really like lightened her up. Like the palette is very beautiful, and she's got lots of laces and silks and dupioni silks and things like that. But and the silhouette is very like nipped, like I think that the kids call it snatched. Her waist is very snatched. Is that the word they use?
That is the word.
I don't know. But anyway, so do you want to tell me a little about her, and like when you came into season 2, like where did you start with her, your thought on her character?
Well, in season 1, and it was, Xanthi's a really good designer, and people were cast very late. Susie Porter, who plays Lady Jane, she's tiny. She is so tiny, and she gets swamped quite easily, and you just have to be really careful, because she's sort of bird-like in a way. And
See, I didn't get that from her. I didn't get that. Like, so it's maybe the way they shot it. I kind of thought she was similar in height to Belle and Fanny. So that's interesting.
But that becomes from the power of her as a performer.
And the actress is just, she's stunning as well. So
she is. She's a really, really good actress. I felt that she was a bit dark, but a lot of decisions, she was really late cast. There was a lot of things that happened in season 1, which luckily for me, for season 2, I had the ability to look at it and think, okay, I feel like the governor's family needs to be heightened in different ways, and her character needed to have more color. I felt that that there was an austereness to her, and I wanted to really play into the regalness of her position in life, and I really enjoy. Susie knows how to wear things really well. Characterization she's really fantastic at the pomp, and so she's just a joy to design for her character, because Susie knows how to wear it and knows exactly where you're coming from. And I felt it was really important to have the regal sashes at times, and the amount of jewelry and the laces, because that was such a part of their life.
You had this one beautiful sash on her. It was like giant gems, I think, when she's in the carriage.
Well,
oh my God.
It wasn't actually giant gems, but it's.
What were they?
It was just a really beautiful Indian edging, like an edging cloth, which I tend to use quite a bit of Indian cloth, because it is very embellished. It's really beautiful. There's a whole host of incredibly beautiful Indian textiles. And so I was looking for something and found this really fantastic edging, and just put jewelry on it, and it became a little 3D. Because
that's why it sort of popped. Like it had like a quite a depth to it. So I was like, what is that? What is she wearing?
Quite a lot of sequins.
Yes.
But good sequins.
Exactly.
It was a period piece of cloth, so the sequins were real sequins when they actually were 3D.
Yeah.
So that was great. But she, she could carry that regalness and not feel that it was ridiculous.
Absolutely. Now, and this is always the thing in period pieces, that the women get all the attention, but the men in this are so amazing. And of course, my favorites are the governor in this season. You said you kind of did a bit of a change with that, the royal family, not the royal family, the governor's family, and his brother, who is a new character. So what was your approach to dressing them? Like, for instance, one of the things I loved is like some of their robes, like a banyan, I think, like these beautiful brocades you had for them. Their waistcoats were so gorgeous. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that?
Well, the governor, I just felt that he needed to be a little bit smarter. It's really hard. Look, I got all of his stuff tailored for his body, and I think Damien Garvey, it's always helpful doing that for any actor, so they actually feel the part. They feel super smart. They when things don't quite fit, I think that sort of is not incredibly helpful. The vests, it's always hard to find great vest fabric, but we're really lucky to find most of them are made out of lengths of tie fabric.
Oh, okay.
Period tie fabric.
Yeah.
And they had a sort of a slight sheen to them, and we're just lucky to find this really stock of them at the time that one of the fabric stores had. So I made that, but the contrast between him and Dickie was really interesting, because Dickie came, brother, he was such a wildly fabulous, repulsive creature, and he was always shoving it down his brother's throat that he used to be the Viceroy of India, which is a much higher ranking than the governor of the colony, especially of what was a penal colony. And so he came in all of his finery. The English, when they went to India, actually adapted a little bit more to change some of their customs dress-wise. And so they created something which was sort of like a little bit like the first safari suit. So I wanted him to come to Australia, showing off all of his sort of like extraordinary knowledge of the world, his travels. So all of his cravats I made out of really beautiful antique saris that I had. I've got quite a collection of fabrics, and used all these really beautiful saris for all of his neckties, for all of his cravats, and just gave him a really different edge, and had beautiful linens and flaxes for his suits. And it was very nice. The contrast between the two brothers, I think, was a really good way to play it, to the distinction.
Yes, agreed. The other waistcoat I really loved was Dodger's. It was like a kind of slubby, like it had a nice texture to it, and the blue was so gorgeous. Like, I know you've talked about the color. I think there was some color grading. I'm not sure what color it actually was, but do you know what I'm speaking of?
Yeah, I do.
Yes.
Yes. Look, that was a bit of incredibly high-end, expensive Italian cloth, but it needed.
That's why it's so gorgeous.
It sort of, the cloth it worked really well for us, because it had these. It did come across as slubby, but it had these sort of like little, nearly like chenille or velvet pieces that came through. So it felt like it had an age and a patina to it as well. So it was a cloth that really worked well for us, but it was unbelievably expensive per meter. But
you didn't need a lot of it, though. You were able to.
No, that's right.
Yeah, and also I think it kind of was nice for Jack's eyes. Like, I think it looked really nice with his eyes as well, right?
Totally.
And it looked beautiful against the palette that Belle had. So I gave that a big thumbs up.
Oh, thank you.
From costume. No, I love everything. I'm just saying that one I particularly noticed. So finally, and this again, unsung heroes, the Fagin's gang. You were mentioning the lower classes. They oftentimes don't get a lot of attention. So how challenging was it to create that distinction between the upper classes, the lower classes? Sorry, it's the elbow. What was it called again? The
Devil's elbow.
Devil's elbow. Yes. So how that you were mentioning a little bit that's pretty challenging, but did you want to explain that a little bit, having the visual differences there?
Well, a large degree of fabric choices were made that I actually wanted people to physically feel that there was a harshness to the cloth, that it would have been harsh on people's skin, as opposed to the upper class that's just beautiful sort of wafty whatever fabric that was just incredibly beautiful. You wanted to feel the deprivation, and a lot of that came from inadequate sort of coverage, the texture of the cloth, and also the sort of drenched sort of color palette that we used within that. And it really needed to fill a deprivation, but at the same time, you actually needed to fulfill the role of character. So each person, had their own character, had their own story arc, which played out within that. But it's always great fun. I often really love the lower classes because you get to actually, a lot of those fabrics are more expensive than the upper classes because they're.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And also you have indigenous characters as well. So did you bring anything in to those characters that would have been maybe part of their culture?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We got our indigenous healer that we had that played over 2 different episodes. We got that beautiful net that she wore that was woven by the indigenous community from the particular area that we were working in. So they and all of the feathers came from. It was all traditional. It was traditionally woven by traditional women with traditional pieces and shells. So
I was wondering about the net, if that was a fishing net. I wasn't quite sure, or like where does that come from? That sort of in their culture to have a net be incorporated into their clothing.
Well, that was a purely practical thing. So often they would use it to carry herbs in, often babies.
Okay.
All different parts of life because they didn't have handbags or carry-alls or whatever. So that was a deeply practical thing. So they could just sling it a different way and put a baby in there, or they'd be gathering herbs or food, and that's the way they carried it. So it was always on them. So they were able to adapt that into their lifestyle to make it work. So it was deeply practical.
I love that. I love it. No, I noticed that immediately, and I was wondering what that was. I just thought it might have been like a design detail. I wasn't sure. So that really is.
No, it was a real. I thought it was really important to actually work with the indigenous community to actually for it actually to be the right thing, because so often, well, it sometimes. The indigenous community just think we just put them in old dirty clothes, and that it's disrespectful.
Absolutely. So, Marion, I have some pictures here. I just have to find them though. Here they are. Okay, we can just go through them. This is what I was calling this Belle's sort of showstopper costume. This is her finale costume. It's also on the posters, I believe. Do you want to tell me a little bit about this one?
This fabric was one of the first pieces of fabric I found for this show. And when I first started, I was just, I fell in love with this fabric because you could use it both sides. And as you can see at different times, like there's different panels that have a maroon background and then an orange background. So different sides of the fabric were used. But I couldn't use it from in the heat of summer because I would have killed Maia because the heat of it, because it really is a beautiful, quite heavy wool, really beautiful to work with. So I was saving it, and I was just hoping it was going to work for the ending. And so the whole season, finally when the last scripts came out, I thought, oh my God, it's perfect. And so it was a very exciting moment.
Yes, absolutely. And I think she spends the whole season finale in this, if I recall, or most of it.
Yeah, it's quite a bit of time. So it's quite a bit of time, and it needed to. There were so many emotional things going on within this episode, and there were times where we could have changed her, but it felt wrong emotionally to change her. So that played over like 2.5 script days or something.
Yeah, and I love how you have the black leather cincher, with her gloves, and it looks so beautifully packaged.
Yeah, it also gives her the strength that the leather belt. It really gives her a strength of character, and it gives her a really very cinched silhouette.
The next one, this one I love. So this is Fagin, and I was calling his Professor Peanut, like the Peanut character.
Yes.
And this is part of his grift, right? He's pretending to be this like real estate businessmen. So do you, like, where did he sort of like lift these pieces and then sort of cobble them together?
Yes, that's the storyline.
Mhm.
That's the storyline that he does that. So there's elements of the army, there's elements of the governor, there's elements of all sorts of things that he believes that Toff would wear. But
Mhm.
he wears them with such, I love Fagin. He really believes that he looks great, and he's completely nailed it and
Oh,
wears it with such aplomb. And it's sort of so ridiculous, the amounts of three different sort of reds all working against each other, but with each other at the same time. And the amount of pomp and buttons and gold braid. It's sort of totally ridiculous. And but at the same time, he wears it like he's the governor of Australia.
oh yeah. No, I love it. It's amazing. Oh, this next one. This is Fanny. This one is so beautiful. And then this is with her sort of. It's funny because her love interest. He's sort of very what you would think of like Fabio. Like he's he. I don't know how to describe him. He's a bit of a fop. I'm not sure what the proper word is. So, do you want to tell me a little bit about this here?
Oh yes, look, that was such a lovely little storyline, the two of them, and he is a gorgeous individual, and his character was so beautiful. The sweetness of their story was quite delightful, and their journey, and they just needed to feel like they belonged together. So his colours very much came from her colours. They had to play into what she was wearing that day. They needed to be. I felt like they needed to be mirror images of each other in a whole lot of ways. And I felt a real sadness when he died.
Oh my
And
gosh, yeah.
yeah, I hope that maybe they find his twin brother and comes back in the next season if there's a next season.
Yes. So the next one here, there's Dodger's blue vest.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I think he's kept his red cravat from his other outfit here.
Yes, he has. So it's a combination of a few different things there. I think that's the French episode, but yes, he was doing high and low end in that. He was going to a high end party, so he still really thinks that just an upmarket cravat will get him through the door.
Exactly. Oh, this one, by the way, this is from the poster. So, and there's Belle in her that beautiful dress, and Fagin in his disguise, and of course we were talking about the inspector, Boxer. He's so handsome. And actually, I realized Dodger's wearing a blue cravat as well. So the blue is, again, you use that color.
Yes.
For him.
Yes.
Yeah, and then there they are again. Oh, and there she is in one of her red dresses.
Yes, that was her archery outfit.
Mm-hmm.
That she played archery in. There was something quite lovely with that little bib front. It was a nice silhouette with the details on the sleeves that you saw when she pulled back the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And that was sort of like a strange mechanical stretch fabric, which worked really well.
Oh, okay, yes. And also this is, I think, she does surgery in this one, I believe.
She does do surgery in that. And that belt is something that's been a treasure of mine for a really long time. That's actually a 1970s Yves Saint Laurent Bohemian piece, which I then remade into a cummerbund for her. It's a really, really beautiful thing. It's been a treasure for a really long time. But that's it was just the most perfect color and the most perfect sort of punctuation point. So it's sometimes really hard parting with your treasures like that, but it was meant to be because it worked.
Yeah, and I think if I recall, her mom, when she comes to the hospital and discovers her and Dodger together, it's hanging on the door.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, so her mom immediately knows. She's in there. She was given away by her belt. Oh, and then here, of course, is the ball.
Oh, yes.
What kind of fabric is that on Belle's dress?
Well, it's a Duchess. It's a really heavy Duchess.
Okay.
But it's got this sort of really beautiful silk. Oh, I don't know. They're sort of like internal pom-poms, if you want. It's like a very 3D. It's got this really beautiful. It's like pulled silks through the cloth, and yeah, it's really beautiful. And the front is a silk, a shot silk, and so are the ruffles on the sleeve. Then there's acres of silk ribbon, velvet ribbons out of Japan, and a whole lot of finishing touches is beautiful Russia braid on the edge of all the fluted sleeves. So there's a lot of details, enormous amount of detail within that outfit. There's about 11, 12 meters of cloth.
Wow.
It's a lot.
And then one of the beautiful feather head pieces she's wearing.
Yes, that was Gareth Blaha made those for me. I sent him a picture and sort of a rough assembly, and he puts them together with such aplomb.
And then this is the last one I have. This is actually from the season opener.
That's right. He's on the way to the gallows.
Yes. And so this is his original outfit. I think he was in jail in this outfit, if I remember.
He was. He finished season 1 in this outfit. Well picked up. He finished season 1 and then started season 2 in because of course he was given no clothes in that time. They just lived in squalor.
It's awful. Yeah. Well, I just have one last thing to ask you. And do you have, like, first of all, are you allowed to tell me if there's a season 3, or is this off topic?
Well, I'm hoping there's a season 3 because
I hope so too.
But I suppose we'll find out when. I suppose it depends on ratings. That old thing. So I presume within the next few months that will be an announcement of some sort. But I keep my fingers crossed. That would be.
And Marion, in the meantime, are you working on anything else coming up?
I am. I'm 2 weeks out of shooting, so it's always curious when your head's in a very, very different place, and it's in a very, very different place from Dodger. It's a modern piece, but a modern piece culturally very, very different, and I can't say that much about it, but it's a 6-part comedy. It's hysterical. And it's a really, really interesting world. I'm drawn to it because it's a very interesting world. And I've learned more on this current project in a whole lot of ways than I've learned for a long time.
Oh, wonderful. Well, maybe when the show is released, you would be willing to come and talk to me about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I love contemporary. I used to be sort of more, connecting with historical or fantasy type shows, but I've been sort of starting to embrace more the designs contemporary shows. So I'd love to talk to you about it when you're allowed to.
Oh, totally. It'd be great fun. Thank you.
Well, anyway, I want to thank you so much for joining me. And I've kept you so long, so I really appreciate it because we've just had so much to talk about and I've really enjoyed it. And I love the show. And so it's going to be out shortly. It's not out as of this recording, but maybe you can remind me the dates. I don't have them in front of me. I'm so sorry.
About the 10th of February.
10th of February. Okay. So, and we didn't really get into spoilers in this, so people can watch this and still be able to enjoy the whole show. So I really hope they watch it. And thank you to everybody who stopped by to watch this recording with me and Marion having this wonderful interview. And I hope it's been a pleasure.
It's been great fun. Thank you.
Thank you as well. Okay, take care. Bye now.
Thanks.